Hey guys, this is a video really targeted at PvP beginners, and if you've played PvP at all as a beginner, you've undoubtedly been parried at some point. And if you've been parried, it can be frustrating, especially if you're not quite sure what you did, how the other person was able to do it, and maybe most importantly, what you should do in the future to avoid having it happen to you again. There is no 100% foolproof way to avoid getting parried. Even very, very good players get parried from time to time, if for no other reason than blind luck on the part of the person doing the parrying. There's no way you're ever going to avoid it all the time. However, I can virtually guarantee that if you follow the steps in this video, and they're very easy steps to follow, they may take a bit of practice, but if you follow them, the amount of parries that you'll be subjected to will be decreased by roughly easily 90 to 95% if you're somebody that's falling into these traps currently. You will almost not have to worry about it at all anymore. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to walk you through a number of different parry types. And I want to first give a big shout out to my good friend, that Dark Souls guy, for helping me put all these clips together. So this guy here was the victim of attacking out of stun here, and we're going to show this clip again here in slow motion so you can see it a bit better. So attacking out of stun, when you get stunned, you can't move. And you see here we're both stunned, and if he tries to attack me as soon as his stun ends, that makes the timing of his attack really predictable, and I was able to take advantage of it. This is probably one of the top ways that most people get parried. There's reaction parries. A reaction parry occurs when the weapon that you're swinging is so slow that the other person can parry it without having to predict your attack, but rather can just watch your attack and react to it as it swings. These are really, really bad attacks. You don't want to do these. These big, ultra great weapons one-handed are a really bad idea for this very reason. They're very, very, very easy to parry. And these are called reaction parries. All the other parry types we're going to see are called prediction parries. You have to predict what your opponent's going to do. This is the classic walk-up parry. So if your timing as you approach your opponent is consistent when you start swinging, you're going to be vulnerable to the walk-up parry. In some cases, your opponent will run at you and parry, and all these are relying on the fact that you're not mixing up your timing sufficiently. You want to make sure that you're not always starting your swing at the same distance from the other player. Sometimes you want to walk up and not swing at all. Essentially, you want to make your opponent uncomfortable. Don't let them feel like they can just always rely on you swinging at the same time all the time. And that's the walk-up parry. The charge weapon art. The charge weapon art is an incredibly useful weapon art if used in the right context and against an opponent that does not have a parry tool out. But if they've got a parry tool out, this is the timing for this parry is one of the easiest in the game. And the reason is, I'll show you here, because the charge weapon art is actually not a single attack. Rather, it results in a multitude of small little attacks, one right after the other. So if you miss the first one or the second one, you can still get the follow-ons. And that's actually what happened to me there. I had missed the first one, and I took damage from it, but then I caught the second one. So unless you really know what you're doing, stay away from the charge weapon arts. Rolling attacks. Rolling attacks, the timing is incredibly simple. That Dark Souls guy and I, on some of these we would mess them up. This was one we almost never ever mess up. Rolling attacks are very easy to parry. Your opponent can see them coming a mile away. You want to use rolling attacks in very, very, very small amounts. My recommendation is, until you're really comfortable, don't use them at all. If you're getting parried while you do rolling attacks, just stay away from them. Running attacks are another example. Running attacks in this game with the right weapons can be really powerful, and they can be a great option, but if you use them predictably, they're very easy for your opponent to parry, and they can see them coming from a mile away. These are usually prediction, but a player with a good parry tool, and we'll cover parry tools in a little bit, you'll see he actually didn't start the parry there until I was well into my running attack. So a player who's got quick enough reflexes can actually wait till the running attack starts to come out and then do it on reaction rather than prediction based. This is called face tank parry because you're tanking the first 2 hits and then parrying the third. And this relies on the way that the hit stun works in Dark Souls. When you hit somebody with the first R1, they go into hit stun, they can't move, and that's what enables you to combo the second R1. After that second R1, the hit stun is very, very brief. They come out of that hit stun almost instantaneously, and then they can parry the third hit. Remember, anything that allows your opponent to get a read on when you're going to attack opens you up to being parried. And there you see that second hit stun is over almost instantaneously, whereas the first R1 hit stun was lengthy enough to enable me to combo into my second R1. So be very careful of swinging multiple times at opponents, more than twice, when they've got a parry tool out. Setup parries. It's again just another example of being able to use your opponent's timing against them. Most people have a certain rhythm that they swing with, and you can use that rhythm against them. So you block the first attack, which prevents you from going into hit stun, and that leaves you open to parry the second attack. This used to be one that I would find myself falling into from time to time and would get parried by. This is another common one. This is a little less common though than some of the others. When you do a running attack at somebody and then immediately press R1 to attack afterwards, you're vulnerable to being parried. The hit stun from a running attack is very brief. You cannot combo a running attack into a follow-on attack. And so your opponent is free to go ahead and parry any follow-on attacks that you may do. So after you do a running attack, if your opponent has a parry tool out, don't immediately start jamming on R1. Wait a couple beats, mix up your timing so that they can't get a good read on you. Incidentally, that Dark Souls guy was the one that taught me about this originally, and this was a mistake that I used to make. The R1, R1, R2 combo, and this goes to straight swords. A lot of players learn this combo, and they use the R2 specifically to avoid getting parried. They use it to avoid that face tank parry, so they don't press 3 R1s, they do 2 R1s and an R2. But that R2 timing can itself become very predictable and can enable your opponent to get a read on you and parry you. The other reason you use the R2, not just to avoid being parried, but if your opponent automatically rolls after the second R1, you can try to catch their roll with the R2. This is a great combo. You shouldn't avoid it. If your opponent has a parry tool out, though, be sure you're mixing up the timing. Don't let the R2 go until you actually see them roll, or you see a parry come out, and then you can do it. Parry baits. These are ways that your opponent may try to bait you into an attack that is easily parried. The classic is the charged R2, because you come charging in thinking that they're in recovery frames, when in reality the recovery frames are almost non-existent. You come in to punish their whiffed R2, but they actually were baiting you to come in and they parry you. Now obviously you're just parrying a running attack, but it's the setup here that makes things a bit different, the attempt to bring you in. So what can you do against a player that's parrying besides mixing up your timing? Well, the one thing that you can do that's super powerful is backstabs. So when you approach your opponent, rather than being susceptible to the walk-up parry, just start circling them. And a few different things can happen. They may attack you, in which case you have to roll out. They may roll, in which case you can try to catch their roll. Or if they try to parry, you're already circling and you can go to their back and get a powerful backstab to punish them. And that'll have the effect of causing them to think twice before they try to parry you again. This is an extremely powerful tool, and I highly recommend that if you're not doing this today, you start. So I want to show you some of the common parry implements that you'll see other players using. We'll start with actually my personal favorite, which is the small shield. In this case, it's the Llewellyn, and I like it because it's got a lot of stability, so I can actually use it as a shield and a parry tool. It's got pretty decent parry frames, meaning the number of active frames during the parry animation, during which if you attack, I'll successfully get a parry. I would say that is one of the most common shields. This is just another example of another type of shield. This is a larger shield. I don't believe it has the same kind of parry frames as the Llewellyn, but it can certainly still parry. Next up is the medium shield. There's a number of different types of medium shields. These are far, far and away the most common in players that play PvE because they have very high stability and usually 100% physical reduction. The parry frames on these aren't very generous. You have to be very, very accurate with your timing when you parry with these. The buckler. The buckler can be scary because it has some of the most parry frames of any parry tool in the game. People won't usually block with it because its stability is very low to compensate for the high parry frames. You see it kind of makes that number 6 animation. You have to be very careful against anyone that's using that shield. And there's the target shield. It has the same type of animation. I think there's a leather shield that has a similar type of animation. And then we come to the cestus. This is probably the most common parry tool. If you see somebody using this, you could almost guarantee that they're going to go for a parry. It has no other value for most people other than parrying. And you can see it looks like you're swatting something away. It has really quick startup and recovery frames, which is one of the reasons players like it. But the amount of active frames suffer a bit. And last of all is the parry dagger. You don't see this one as often. Sometimes it can be hard to spot. If a player pulls this out, you may not notice it right away, and it's got pretty good parry frames. So the dagger, the cestus, and then the various types of shields are the ones that you want to look out for. Well, guys, I hope this helps some of the new players. Thanks for watching.